The clang of the steel door echoed, a final, brutal punctuation mark on my freedom. I was in Coldstone Penitentiary. Population, nightmares. I hugged myself, the orange jumpsuit doing little to ward off the chill that seeped into my bones. They called it Coldstone for a reason. The place was a mausoleum, built with granite blocks that seemed to absorb all light and warmth. The air hung thick, heavy with the stench of sweat, disinfectant, and something else, something acrid and ancient, like rotting meat clinging to the pores of the stone itself. My crime? Petty theft. A stupid mistake fueled by desperation, landing me a 2-year sentence. I was 18, terrified, and utterly alone. The guard, a hulking brute with a face like a granite gargoyle, shoved me down the corridor. Welcome to hell, fresh meat. Cell block D. You'll learn the ropes quick enough. Cell block D. The name alone felt ominous. The corridor was lined with cells, already plunged into shadow despite the harsh fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Faces peered out from behind bars, gaunt and hollow-eyed. Whispers followed me like spiders crawling on my skin. My cell was small, cramped, and smelled of stale urine. A rusted bunk bed, a chipped sink, and a toilet that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the prison was built. I was assigned the top bunk. Great, just great. My cellmate was a mountain of a man named Silas. He had tattoos snaking across his shaved head and arms thick as tree trunks. He didn't say a word, just watched me with eyes that were as black and bottomless as a well. The first few days were a blur of routine and terror. The mind-numbing boredom of prison life was punctuated by moments of sheer dread. The mess hall, a cauldron of aggression and simmering rage. The yard, a concrete wasteland where alliances were forged and broken with casual brutality. The constant, watchful eyes of the guards, who seemed to derive pleasure from our misery. I tried to keep to myself to make myself invisible. But in a place like Coldstone, invisibility was a myth. You were either prey or predator. And I was definitely prey. It started subtly. A cold spot in my cell, even when the air was stifling. Whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The feeling of being watched, even when I was sure I was alone. Then came the dreams. Vivid, horrifying nightmares of being trapped in a labyrinth of twisting corridors. The walls closing in on me. The air filled with the screams of the damned. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding, the feeling of suffocating pressure clinging to me. I tried to tell Silas about the dreams, the whispers, the feeling of dread that was slowly consuming me. He just grunted, his eyes never leaving mine. Coldstone gets to everyone, kid. It's the stones. They remember. His words didn't reassure me. They terrified me. One night I woke up to a sound. A scraping, scratching sound, coming from the wall behind my bunk. It was faint at first, barely audible above the snoring of the other inmates. But it grew louder, more insistent, until it was a frantic, clawing sound that made my teeth ache. I sat bolt upright, my heart hammering against my ribs. Silas didn't stir. The scratching continued, growing closer, as if something was trying to burrow its way through the stone. I reached out a trembling hand and touched the wall. It was cold, rough, and vibrating. The scratching stopped. A moment of silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. Then, a whisper, so faint I almost imagined it. Help me. My blood ran cold. I pulled my hand away as if I'd been burned. I scrambled down from the bunk, my eyes wide with terror. Silas? I whispered, shaking his shoulder. Silas, wake up. Do you hear that? He grumbled, rolling over and pulling the blanket over his head. Go back to sleep, kid. It's just the rats. Rats? This wasn't rats. This was something else. Something far more sinister. The scratching started again, louder this time. The whisper returned, more insistent. Help me, please. I'm trapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran to the cell door and started banging on the bars, screaming for the guards. Help! Someone help me! There's something in the wall. My cries echoed down the corridor, but no one came. The other inmates just groaned and cursed, telling me to shut up. The scratching grew more frantic, the whisper turning into a desperate plea. Please, I can't breathe. I felt a surge of something. Pity? Fear? I didn't know, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to do something. I ran back to the bunk and started pounding on the wall with my fists. Who are you? What do you want? The scratching stopped. A moment of silence. Then, a voice, weak and raspy, but undeniably human. My name is Thomas. I was a guard here. Years ago, they locked me in here. They left me to die. Locked in the wall? I didn't understand. Was this some kind of twisted joke? Why? I asked, my voice trembling. Why did they lock you in the wall? The voice was barely a whisper now, fading in and out. I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. Something evil. In the stones. Evil in the stones? Silas's words echoed in my mind. They remember. What did you see? I asked frantically. What was it? But the voice was gone. Only the scratching remained, growing weaker and weaker. Thomas! Thomas! Answer me. Silence. Then a final, desperate scratch, followed by nothing. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. I had heard a man die, trapped in the wall of my cell. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bunk, staring at the wall, listening for any sign of life. But there was nothing. The next morning, I told the guards everything. They laughed. They called me crazy. They said I was hallucinating from withdrawal. They threatened to throw me in solitary if I didn't shut up. But I knew what I had heard. I knew Thomas was real. And I knew something evil was lurking within the walls of Coldstone. I started to investigate. I talked to the other inmates, the ones who had been here for years, the ones who knew the secrets of the prison. Some of them dismissed my story as madness. But others, they looked at me with a strange understanding in their eyes. One old-timer, a lifer named Reyes, told me stories about Coldstone's dark history. Stories of prisoners disappearing without a trace. Stories of guards driven mad by the voices in the walls. Stories of a dark entity that dwelled within the prison, feeding on the suffering and despair of its inmates. Coldstone ain't just a prison, kid, Reyes said, his voice raspy with age. It's a living thing, and it's hungry. He told me the prison was built on an ancient burial ground, a place where unspeakable rituals had been performed. He said the stones themselves were imbued with a dark energy, a malevolent consciousness that preyed on the weak and vulnerable. He also told me about a hidden chamber deep within the prison, a place where the entity resided, a place where the walls were said to bleed. I knew I had to find that chamber. I had to uncover the truth about Coldstone. It wasn't easy. The prison was a maze of corridors and hidden passages. The guards were always watching. But I was driven by a desperate need to understand what was happening, to stop the evil that was consuming Coldstone. I started to notice things, strange symbols etched into the walls, whispers that seemed to come from nowhere, the feeling of being watched, not by the guards, but by something else, something unseen, something ancient. One night, I found a hidden passage behind a loose stone in my cell. It was narrow and dark, and smelled of damp earth and decay. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I stepped inside. The passage led me through a labyrinth of tunnels, deeper and deeper into the heart of the prison. The air grew colder, the stench more overpowering. I could hear the whispers now, clearer, more distinct. They were filled with pain, with suffering, with an unutterable sense of dread. Finally, I reached a dead end. A massive stone wall blocked my path. But as I touched the wall, I felt a vibration, a resonance that seemed to echo through my very being. I pushed against the wall, and it slowly, grudgingly began to move. Behind the wall was a chamber, a vast, cavernous space filled with an unholy light. The walls were covered in grotesque carvings, depicting scenes of torture and sacrifice. And in the center of the chamber, bathed in the unholy light, was a pulsating mass of darkness. It was the entity, a living embodiment of evil. As I stared at it, it turned towards me. I felt a wave of pure terror wash over me, a feeling so intense that I almost blacked out. The entity reached out to me, its tendrils of darkness reaching for my soul. I felt myself being drawn towards it, my will dissolving, my mind slipping away. Then I heard a voice, a faint, raspy voice, whispering my name. Don't give in. Fight. It was Thomas. His voice gave me strength. I fought against the entity's pull, pushing back with all my might. I focused on the memory of his voice, the sound of his desperate plea. Slowly, agonizingly, I began to break free. The entity recoiled, hissing in frustration. I knew I couldn't defeat it, not alone, but I could escape. I turned and fled, running back through the tunnels, the entity's screams echoing behind me. I emerged from the hidden passage, gasping for breath, my body trembling. I sealed the passage behind me, hoping to contain the evil within. I knew I couldn't stay in Coldstone. I had to get out. I started to plan my escape. I knew it was a long shot, but I had nothing to lose. I won't bore you with the details. Suffice to say, it was a desperate, dangerous gamble. But somehow, against all odds, I managed to break free. I ran. I ran as far and as fast as I could. I never looked back. I'm still haunted by what I saw in Coldstone. The memories of Thomas, the whispers in the walls, the entity in the chamber. They will never leave me. But I'm alive. I'm free. And I know the truth about Coldstone Penitentiary. The walls have teeth, and they're always hungry. I still have nightmares, of course. I see the grotesque carvings on the walls. I hear the whispers of the damned. But sometimes, in my dreams, I also hear Thomas's voice. You made it, he whispers. You got out. Don't let them forget. And I won't. I'll never forget. Because Coldstone Penitentiary wasn't just a prison. It was a gateway to hell.